Making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome. This is the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Alrik the founding host of the podcast. I'm a sci-fi horror filmmaker, and my first feature film, The Alternate, is playing the film festival circuit right now.
I'm Liz Manischel. I'm a writer, director, producer who has made 2 features, is currently in development on about 5 more. I'm a distribution consultant who used to manage Sundance's creative distribution initiative. This week, we welcome filmmaker extraordinaire Rebecca Eskreis to the show to talk about the making and release of her first feature, What Breaks the Ice. Rebecca talks about her road to getting the film made, why she waited for more money before she went into production, and she talks a little bit about her decision to skip some festivals and go straight to distribution. We are going to get right into the interview, but don't go away afterwards because we have a discussion about distribution, and we're even going to talk about the latest news in specifically the Aussie strike. But first, Alrik, how are you?
I'm like barely hanging on to life. My job right now is really demanding. I have been staying up till 2 a.m. working on this thing, multiple nights in a row. And it's really been tough. And I mean, on top of all that, I've got the movie happening. I had a screening in Oakland last week that was a lot of fun, but as I thought, they had so many technical difficulties. Man, it was crazy, including like putting up this huge blow up screen outside next to a street light that they couldn't turn off. And so the whole movie was like washed out for like almost the whole time. Then at the very end, it turned off for like the last 10 minutes. So they got to see the finale without the distraction. But I mean, literally my movie's so dark, like you could barely see anything for like a good amount of the scenes. If it was like a night scene, it's like you just couldn't see.
You brought that up weeks ago. I remember you were saying like your concern was, will it be dark enough to do an outdoor screening? I remember that because I remember looking outside my window at 7:30 being like, oh, it's dark outside. This is going to be fine for Alrik. And then now the street light debacle. Oh,
yeah, it was all crazy because I guess they normally do it in the center of this green grass field area, but then it was too windy. So they had to put it next to a wall, and then they just put it too close to one of these lights. They could have slid it over like 10 feet and it would have been better. But yeah, they didn't. And that was it. And I don't know. I love those guys. I love the film festival. They're really sweet people, but if they don't hire somebody to do the technical stuff, which they don't, unless it's like at a proper theater, it's always a disaster. So I was telling my friend, like when I'd retire, like I'm just going to donate my time and like become a full-time volunteer for the festival just to do their technical work. Like when I don't have a job to do anymore, I'll be like, okay, look, I'll just do it for you guys, free, whatever. But like I'll just make them all look great and they won't look crappy anymore. And filmmakers will be a lot happier. But anyway,
they need you.
Yeah, it's been a little bit crazy, and then also doing distribution meetings, which we'll talk about a little bit later for the movie too. So it's just a lot of juggling. But anyways, how about you? What's going on your end?
It's so funny. I think we're both in like a very stressed out situation right now. Like I was like, oh, you stole my answer. Barely hanging on. That's an appropriate evaluation. I did want to commiserate in that I had a screening at a film festival where I hired a band to play a set, a David Bowie cover band to play a set before the screening. And they left, I don't know what drum, I think it's a snare drum. They left a drum on stage, which was really just like right in front of the screen. They left it and didn't take it away before the movie. So the entire sound bounced out of the drum throughout the whole movie. You could just like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I don't know physics that well, but I totally understand. It's just like one minor mistake will ruin the experience. I'm okay.
Good.
I've overcommitted myself as per usual, and I'm just very stressed out about that. And to pair with that, I started watching Midnight Mass, and I only watched 1 episode where nothing happened that would be very scary at all. And I still can't sleep at night because I could just think about all the episodes that I'm going to see that will be scary. And so it's just a lethal combination of spooky season and pre-production for me. But Hearing that you're suffering too somehow made me feel better. So thank you for suffering.
That's
Alrik.
good. At least you're suffering for your craft in a way. Like,
That's true.
you're working on this short film and that's like the blood, sweat, and tears that you're, pouring out of you. But yeah, for me, it's like I'm doing some of that, but it's a lot of this day job stuff, which, like I'm happy to do. Like obviously I love my job, but it's like, it would be more fun if it was my movie.
That's
that
such
I
a great
was
point.
upset.
Well, actually, I haven't and I know we need to move on, but the reason I'm so stressed out is not necessarily the short anymore. I've actually crewed up. We're almost cast up. Like things are falling in line. It's amazing. It's that I don't have time to fix the script and shot list because of all my day job stuff.
Mm.
So that's what's stressing me out. It's not actually the tasks. It's like you, it's like, how do I buy more time? How do I increase the day? Like if I could just like pay $20 and get an extra hour, I'd be pretty happy. And I think that's maybe also how you're feeling, is like trying to stuff too much into one day.
Well, you're not sleeping. You just need to shot list. So like when
Well, I
you can't sleep at
can't.
night.
Well, because Sean's a really light sleeper.
Oh no.
So I'm just like lying there, like curled up, thinking about Mike Flanagan movies and just like,
Oh, that's so funny.
I can't really do much. He keeps saying things like, no, 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 do your work. But I know I'll keep him up. So whatever. It's fine. Everything's fine. What about happier things? What about Patreon? Let's talk about Patreon.
Yeah. So we have a Patreon page if you didn't know. We have a lot of wonderful people who are on there right now. And basically it's the way the show survives, the way that like the wheels stay on, especially when Liz and I are overworked and look ridiculous. If you saw the video right now, like my hair is all over the place and I'm wearing the same shirt as I wore yesterday. It's a disaster. But anyways, the Patreon is what makes it possible for the show to keep on going. And we have, a bunch of editors that we're going to be working with going forward. Liz, will send you wonderful things at certain levels, like a sticker potentially. And then at $9 a pin. So yeah, check it out and see what you think.
Our love and appreciation, our lifelong devotion to you, if you help us make this show, because I do think there's a reason why it's been going on for 6 or 7 years, and I think there's a lot of love and commitment to what this show is, and we just want to keep going. So thank you in advance.
Absolutely. Raw determination and stubbornness beyond belief that, this show will go on no matter what the hell happens. But with your help, it'll be a little bit easier for us. Also, you got to make sure to check out the International Screenwriters Association, or the ISA, which is an organization designed to connect writers with filmmakers through a number of programs they offer. They will publish your logline to a network of industry professionals. They do consultation, they do contests. They have a top 25 writers list featuring some of the best writers in the network. So head over to www.networkisa.org to sign up for free today. And, you can get the yearly membership for $80, which is normally $100, by using the promo code MMIH 2021, which is valid through November 30th, and for new ISA Connect members only. But make good use of it.
Yeah. And without further gloobity glop, here's our interview with Rebecca Eskreis.
Sure. Welcome, Rebecca, to the show. Thanks so much for coming. Give us the elevator pitch for What Breaks the Ice.
Sure. So What Breaks the Ice is a coming of age drama thriller set in the late 90s. It's a story about two teenage girls from kind of opposite sides of the tracks in a small town who become fast friends and then accidentally commit a murder. And then I guess the film concerns itself with whether they'll get away with this secret that they're both holding, and also whether it actually was an accident. And as the story unfolds, I think it kind of touches into some more nuanced issues about consent and about morality that I think are particularly appropriate to the time period that the film is set, which is exactly the year 1998, which is like kind of the summer after the whole Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing was going on in the world.
How many days did you shoot?
We shot for 20 days, but we were like 21 out of 20 because we got rained out and we had to go dark. So, but 20 days.
And if you can say, what was the rough budget of the film?
We're a modified low budget film. So, in that budget range, and also qualified for the New York State tax credit program. So we did all of our film in New York, in upstate New York, and we did post-production in New York City.
I'm just hate to do this, but for the people who don't know what that means, can you specify what modified low budget is?
Of course. So that means that like our on paper budget was around $750,000 or less. It was not less. And then there are certain incentives that SAG allows for diversity and other aspects that can kind of bump your budget a little higher. And then, like I said, fortunately, we're participating in the tax credit program from New York State. And that doesn't actually play into the actual budget tier level, but that's where we were.
Yeah. I was on a movie where we were that, and then they were like, oh, we can go up to 1.4 million. And I think the movie that we were on didn't go that high, but it's interesting to hear like how that works and what that means and how you qualify for that,
Yeah. I mean, we are a film that has a lot of almost all of our department heads are all women, and additionally people of color, and we're really proud of that regarding the film. And then additionally, like there are just the way that you can structure your budget for those kinds of things is it's a little bit of a dance, but I'm proud of the way that we were able to put that all together. So
I wasn't sure how that question was going to go. I thought you were going to be super vague, and I was not going to press you because you're one of my favorite people and you get special treatment this whole hour. But anyway, I'm just really excited that you got so specific, and I'm segueing that to my next question. How did you come up with the idea for the script?
So it's interesting. It was sort of an interesting, unexpected full circle for me, which is that I actually started writing the film after seeing Richard Linklater's film Boyhood at a special screening at the IFC Center. And I thought it was an amazing film, pure outside of the structural way that the film was made. It just got me thinking, I was at a place in my life and thinking about what the first film that I would want to make would be. And I thought, well, what would girlhood look like for me if I was going to write such a film? And I started thinking back to my adolescence, and I spent a lot of my formative years from like around ages 9 until around 15 in sleepaway camp with, in the woods of New Hampshire. And it was it wasn't like we were feral beings running around like crazy. I mean, we had counselors and adults around, but we spent a lot of time just kind of being teenagers and living outside of technology and away from our parents. And I really thought back to a lot of those conversations that I had with my friends about the things that we were so curious about as far as what it meant to be an adult. And then just the things that we cared about generally. And at the same time, I was really always searching for filmmakers that inspired me. And one of them is the great Andrea Arnold. And I read an interview with her where she talked about her screenwriting process. And she said, I don't always put pressure on myself to think about what the story is. Sometimes I just start with characters. And so I started with 2 characters and conversations that they were having with each other. And then from there, built out a story that I wanted to tell. But it really just started with the 2 main characters of Sammy and Emily.
I have to ask, so how did the murder come into play in this? Because you're talking about drawing from your own experiences of girlhood and everything. It's like, yeah, so murder then, yes.
Are you asking me if I've killed anybody? I mean, I don't know if I can really disclose that on this podcast.
We are recording.
Another piece of I will be honest, I think there's another piece to this, which I don't know if I'm really proud of, because I think the part that I can be proud of is I was a rabid Agatha Christie fanatic as a child. I mean, I think I've read every Agatha Christie book out there. Loved Nancy Drew. I was from a very young age just fascinated with murder mystery. And then I read this fascinating story. And again, I'm not proud of the fact that this fascinated me. It was a story of these two girls in West Virginia who befriended. They were like, it was basically two girls who then befriended a third girl, and girl number one and girl number three decided they just didn't want to be friends with the other one anymore. And so they killed her. And then they proceeded for the next 6 months to participate in like a very in-depth murder investigation in their town until one of them cracked. And I remember watching this story unfold and thinking, how unbelievable that they were able to keep this secret for so long. But also the fact that the two girls who then became the ones that killed the other one, that the depth of their friendship was so intense that they were willing to protect each other until literally one of them had a nervous breakdown. And I guess the reason it captivated me from a storytelling perspective is that I really truly believe that at that age in your life, your friendships go deeper than blood in a way that I think as adults, our friends are important to us and we value them. But there's something about like when you're a teenager and you like find that best friend, like, nothing can kind of penetrate that friendship.
So I have to ask my real question now. So how long did you spend working on the film from, coming up with the idea to it being released now?
I came up with the idea 7 years ago, but I would say that truly when I think about like writing the screenplay and to now 5 years. With some, other stuff happening in between, like real jobs and other stuff, life. Yeah. 5 years.
Compared to all the other projects you've done, how difficult was this one?
I put this up in the top 5 things that are the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And that's not an exaggeration. Well worth it. But true to the name of your podcast, making movies is hard. So,
okay, I'm going to attempt to ask a question as per usual that isn't fully formed, and it's even harder because I know you so well. But I think so. Rebecca, by the way, is the inspiration for 2 characters in 2 out of 3 of my feature films. She infiltrates my mind in a very specific way because I love her. So Rebecca, you've worked for like bigwigs, massive bigwigs, and we could get into it. But I knowing you, I think that there's been a degree of strategy in your own career to why you've done the day jobs that you've had and how that has informed the development of this feature and every other project you're planning to work on. So for those who, a lot of filmmakers listen to this podcast and a lot of them don't work in this industry. And I just wanted to see if you could speak to why you chose the jobs you did and how they've helped you as an artist, if you could speak to such a large question.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's an unlimited number of paths that you can choose to find your way into directing films. The path that I chose was really and I should say this, like, Liz and I went to USC Film School together, and while we pursued our MFAs, it's where we met and became friends, obviously. I chose the path of learning the industry and it was a choice that I made. And I know that not everybody chooses that path. I went into working as an assistant, and I was an assistant for independent film producers, for studio producers, then studio directors. I even briefly worked as an assistant to a major celebrity. And I think that all of those experiences kind of, I would say, like, dictated the path that I took. As far as, I always had the goal in mind that I wanted to be a director and writer, but I really wanted to know how to do it by knowing the inside out, so that when I had the opportunity to, fundraise and pitch my project and go out to talent, that I wasn't, and this is no judgment on people that take different paths, because I could also say that my path was, I don't know, it had its own challenges that I sometimes wonder if I needed to go through all of those channels. But at the same time, I'm a researcher by nature, and I think it really helped me to understand the business so that I knew how to approach it when I was coming at it as the leader of my first feature. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that path is for everyone, but I think what it did help me, and what did help inform me first and foremost, was thinking like an entrepreneur. Like, if I'm coming at this not just as an artist and a filmmaker, but like truly like a woman starting her own business, what does it look like to approach the industry as an individual, building a team in order to get a film made?
Going back to the assistant stuff, when I was working, coming up, like trying to figure out what to do and like how to get to directing, like, I was PAing, I was doing all these things. And I asked somebody like, okay, well, maybe I should be a director's assistant. Like, that'll be the best thing, because then I could be like right close with the director. And then they're like, no, you're just going to be getting laundry the whole time. You're never going to get any whatever experience or knowledge from that, but you did it. So is that true? Like, do you just end up doing all these stupid tasks, or did you actually get to spend time with them on set and learning while they're doing their process?
I had as a director's assistant specifically, I had a very positive experience. I worked for the late Jonathan Demme, who's like one of the greatest directors to have ever lived. And he was a very generous human being. And so I was fortunate that he did let me learn from him. I'm not saying that was an easy job, but it allowed me the opportunity to see what his job looked like. And who knows if I'll ever get to, I mean, I don't even compare myself to getting to that level of success. What I was going to say is, even just being somebody that a studio ever wants to work with, I don't know if that will ever happen. Who knows? We never know where our lives will take us. But what I did learn from him was how to be a professional director. And it even helped me with my own film, where how to navigate working with producers and working with talent and working with a crew, where I saw someone do it at the absolute highest level. Now, that's not to say that assistant job, can't end up that way. In fact, I've often spoken with a lot of people coming up in the industry and told them to be really careful about who they choose to work for, because there are a lot of people out there who will say that they're going to give you that kind of opportunity. And then you do find yourself doing a lot of mindless tasks that aren't really giving you the experience that you want. And those jobs can be very time consuming at the expense of you really investing in yourself as an artist. So I think there has to be some kind of a balance, but at the same time, like when you asked me when I started writing this film, I said it was in 2014, but I actually took almost 2 years off from doing a lot of creative things because I wanted to work for Jonathan. And I thought that it would be an incredible opportunity. So I think just being really careful about who you say yes to, because your time is valuable as well.
I like that you said you have a researcher's mind, and thinking about the way you teamed up to make this film. I mean, just like the pedigree of the people involved, the funders involved, you utilizing tax credits. Like, I think a lot of first-time filmmakers, again, they're just going to, and and I've done this myself, just kind of scramble together whatever they can just to get it in the can. In terms of casting, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think that's going to be pivotal for you and maybe has already proven to be pivotal for you. Did you always think you were going to, was there any moment where you were just going to make this film come hell or high water, even without the pedigree that you earned now? And what convinced you not to do that?
It's a great question because I did. And in fact, probably around the time when we saw each other in Austin, South by, probably 4 years ago, you know, I had been living in Austin for 2 years, and I did have a moment. I actually rewrote the entire script to be set in like the lake, you know, the hill country of Texas. And we did talk about doing a version of the film where it was just whatever we could get together, we were going to make it. And I think what changed, honestly, and I, you know, if I'm going to be totally honest, if I'm going to take off my businesswoman hat and put on my artist hat, it was a strange time because I really wanted to make the film so much. And then I had this really great opportunity that came to me through the Austin Film Society. And that's when we started to pivot with the core team that was involved already, where we said, maybe we should be looking to do this differently. Maybe we can leverage this into more money, into approaching different type of talent than we had been thinking about. And that's not to say that you shouldn't go out and make your film. And I think that we've endured a lot of headaches because we had a bigger budget than we were planning on. But at the same time, I think at the end of the day, whereas, you know, I think every script, like a script has its own personality once you write it, and then the movie dictates what it needs to be. It takes on a life of its own. And I think that with this particular film, it actually might have been dangerous to try to do it for less money than we did. Given the fact that there's so many exteriors and there's some stunts and there's just a lot of stuff that goes on in the script that even if we thought that we could do it for less, I actually don't know if it would have been safe to do it for less. So I think it kind of all came together in the right way.
Like, this is something that I think about a lot as a filmmaker. Like, I just made my first feature and I didn't wait for more money. I just got what I could and I made it, you know? And I kind of feel like in a lot of ways, like for years, I was waiting for more money or trying to find more money and it didn't work out. And, you know, wondered like, oh man, if I just like had tried to do it earlier, would have been better. But honestly, it took me that long just to raise what I got. So I guess the question I'm trying to get to is like, do you feel like despite the dangerous aspects, let's say you were able to shoot it and pull it off, like, what do you think the difference in where you're at now would be? Like, would it be like a different distributor? Do you feel like the movie wouldn't even be done yet? Like what would the world look like if you had made it for like a much lower budget?
Also a great question. I think that, and I totally support that. You know, I think that, like I said, I think every movie kind of dictates where it tells you where it wants to go. We found ourselves in a situation where we got a sales agent early on because of the post-production deal that we negotiated with a post house in New York, Goldcrest Films, that takes on independent films and documentaries and then has like a vertically integrated structure where they do some in-kind investment, and then they also do all your posts there, and then they're your sales agent. And so I think that, look, that if I'm going to be honest, yeah, it costs more money to do it that way. But at the same time, we were set up where the film was being pitched to distributors even before it was finished. At the same time, I think when you make a film for less money, you stand to quickly recoup more money So,
sorry.
yeah, I don't know.
Ha
I mean, that's my fantasy. My fantasy is that, if we made this movie for less money, that we'd make more money back faster. But I'm sure that's not always true, as the experts are telling me here. We all have our fantasies about how things look different on different sides. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a hard question. I also think that COVID affected a lot of this. The whole distribution model really got upended. We were talking to a lot of distributors that just completely stopped buying movies for a whole year. There was just nothing that was happening. And I think for a lot of people out there, like, you are wondering why all of a sudden all these Vince Vaughn movies that you forgot about from 2010 were suddenly on Netflix. And it was because people weren't buying content. And that's even for the smaller places. So I think it's hard to say how it would have been different. But I do think that I think we made the right choice for the movie. But I also don't think that I don't think you need to do things the way that we did to have a successful film.
For what it's worth, I 100% believe you did the right thing. And I remember being in a women in film mentorship meeting, where it's the only meeting we had. And I said something about how I didn't want to do bigger budget projects. And they were like, "You're afraid." And I'm like, "No, I'm not afraid." And then I was like, "Why am I getting so defensive about this? Why am I getting so angry?" And then I was like, "Oh, I'm afraid." And I think there's a lot of one aspect of what you're talking about, I think, is there's a lack of confidence from emerging filmmakers who just want to prove themselves and get something in the can and then move on to the next project. But it seems as if you've invested so much time and energy in what you thought was a really meaningful idea that had a lot of substance to it. And this is not a question, I'm realizing, but you decided to back it and to put everything behind it. So if there was any question, I don't think what you did, I think what you did was the right decision. And I think an alternative may be going to production too soon just to get it over with, so to speak. And I don't think that's what Alrik did either. Alrik, I'm not.
No,
now I realize I'm in between two strategies.
Well, it's funny because, like, when I was going into production, I was like, am I doing my movie a disservice? Like, should I have waited? Should I have raised more money? And then the answer I just came back to for myself is like, no, like, this is the movie that had to be made now to get out of my system and move on to whatever the next project is, and like, having talked to, like, hundreds of other filmmakers, and like hearing stories of people who start with like the $20,000, $30,000 feature, then work their way up to like the, 100,000, then 200,000, and then X and X. I feel like by doing what you did, it's like you skipped a bunch of those steps. Like, now that you're at like this, whatever you are, whatever the budget is, but this, over 500, over $500,000 zone, it like puts you in another stratosphere for your next project. So I think, like, is also not a question, but I think it's more like, yeah, like, that's the benefit you get from being able to pull that off. And it also should be said that it's really hard to do what you did. And it's not like something that anyone can do, or we all would have done it. Right. And so I think, like, the question that I am going to ask you is, like, what did you do to get yourself in the position where you could make your movie for that kind of budget?
Sure. So, and first of all, congratulations, Alrik, on your film, and really exciting. And I can't wait to see it. Truly very exciting. Yeah. So I think that, like I said, going back to, Liz's question and, our conversation about my career trajectory, I'd worked on so many different sized films, as an employee of others, but very close to the people that were making decisions about them. And I think in LA, especially, I know you guys are in LA. I have
not Alrik.
Oh, Alrik, where are you?
I'm in the East Bay, Northern California.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Outside the system, baby.
Nice. I'm here in New York, but I lived in LA a long time. So I think what's been interesting was when I got away from, and not in a, because I had I had great experiences, some not so great experiences, but I saw how movies were made on all different scope and scale. And so it was funny to me. Look, the amount of money that it costs to make this film still seems like a ridiculous amount of money to me. It's not like I'm walking around being like, oh, that was nothing, whatever. I see six figures all the time, it felt like a lot of money to me, and it is a lot of money. But what was funny to me at the same time was talking to folks I had worked with, both in LA and New York, but like on different budget tiers, where they'd be like, how do you make a movie for that amount of money? I'm like, you can do it, I promise. And look, of course, we had an incredibly passionate crew. We had people that really were committed to the project. We paid people, but I would say, what prepared me to do that? I don't know. Sometimes I think it was a little bit of an out of body experience, but it was also it was the culmination of a lot of other jobs that I had done where I saw enormous movie sets. Like, we're talking on the level of $100 million. And I had also been on, in addition to like doing student films and very low budget short films and documentaries where there's 5 people in the crew. And so you kind of just find your compass of what feels right. And yeah, I'm not going to, there were some days, and I can think of 2 or 3 in particular, where I looked around and I was like, how are there this many people here? This is crazy. But also recognized that, everybody was there. Everyone there was needed to make sure that the film was made properly and safely. So I don't know. I think I think with a lot of things, like you were saying earlier, Alrik, about just deciding the movie had to come out of you and happen now, and that was the time to do it. I was there, and directing a movie it's like it's like throwing a party, and you show up, everything's already been planned. You just try your best to execute it.
To enjoy it.
Yeah, try that too.
I want to go back to casting because I have a theory that the 2 leads you cast, I use the word pivotal, I'm going to say it again, will be pivotal for the release of this film and the marketing of this film. And I'm a massive proponent for the importance of casting in indie film. I assume that you worked with the casting director to get to work with these 2 amazing actresses, but can you talk a little bit about their role in how you're putting the film out into the world?
Definitely. And I know for sure, having seen, obviously, talk to you so much about your films, Liz, and the incredible cast that you've had. Absolutely know that casting is really important. We did work with a casting director, Bess Pfeiffer, who's amazing. They've been great as far as supporting the film.
I think name check. It's Sophia and name check them. Sorry.
Yeah. So the 2 leads of the film have been really very supportive of, not only the process of the film, but putting it out in the world. Sophia Hublitz and Madeline Klein. Yeah, I mean, you need your cast to support and be excited about what you've made. And I think one of the challenges that I would actually be pretty honest about talking about is, and I think both of you can relate to this, you care more about your movie than anybody else will, right? So I directed this movie. It's going to be, we actually started production a couple of days ago. It'll be 3 years ago. To me, this movie is still like one of the most important things in my life. And I'm not going to say that it isn't for the cast, because they're so supportive. They're wonderful. I really say this honestly, there's not a weak link in the cast or crew of this film, but yeah, I also respect that like people's lives move on, and then having to reflect back on something that, was 3 years ago for them. So I'm really
in their young
grateful.
lives. It's like,
And they're young. I mean, they're young people. Like when you're 37, like what's 3 years? You're like, I sneezed and 3 years went by, you know. Today's my brother's 35th birthday. And I was like, oh, so like basically we're now the same age. I don't, you know, it's like, whereas he was always like my little brother. And now I feel like we're just gonna be the same age forever. You know, for them, you know, they're in their early 20s. They did a kick-ass awesome job, and they've continued to go on and do incredible things. And so, you know, I think in the casting process, we actually talked about this yesterday. We did a screening with the SAG Foundation, and we were talking about the importance in casting of like not just having talented people, but being lucky enough to cast good people that want to stay invested long after the actual process that they're involved with ends until the movie comes out.
To that point, like, what was your experience with your cast in the rehearsal process? Like, did you have a lot of rehearsal time or any rehearsal time, or was it more like, you know, you sign them on, they come the day before, and then you're off shooting the movie?
I'd say it was more like the latter. We did not have a lot of prep time, which I think a lot of independent films don't. You know, you're like, great, that last piece of money came in, let's go. And you know, and just as a sidebar on that, you know, we continued fundraising through production and post. We didn't have our whole budget when we shot the movie. But as far as rehearsal, yeah, Sophia and Maddie, Sophia was in New York. She wasn't shooting Ozark at the time. And Maddie came out from LA, and we went out to dinner, and then we did it. The three of us did a table read, you know, in Brooklyn at, you know, an old playhouse that one of our producers, Michael, had access to. And Megan, who's the production designer and also my business partner, like brought everybody donuts. And then the next day we like left to go upstate, and we didn't even have a lot of our locations locked. You know, it was a little bit of a scramble, but they were very invested in the roles and had done a lot of their own research and had asked me a lot of questions in advance. And I think what I also got very lucky with is, you know, we didn't do any chemistry reads or anything like that. I mean, they were cast individually, and I just preyed on my instincts that they were going to get along and be able to execute the friendship that is so pivotal to the film. And they did, and they actually became really, really good friends, and, you know, shared a suite in a hotel together for most of shooting, and are still great friends. So we got very lucky in that respect.
I was talking to Tiffany. Do you remember Tiffany Gray? I was talking to her the other day, and she was like, remember chemistry reads? Do you remember when they used to do that? And I was like, oh my God, you're right. We don't do that anymore. And that's why the romantic comedy just went downhill, is my massive theory, is like, because they didn't do those chemistry reads, which are vital to the rom-com. But I digress. I think that there's a pocket of genre films that do well commercially, but it's never a guarantee that they're embraced by festivals or best embraced by you know, like elitist, pompous, pretentious critics or whatever it is, because it's genre and it's not elevated horror and it's not action. It's this whole other think piece onto itself, and whatever, that's another show. I just wanted to see, you know, I know you played Woodstock, but I know you played but in this film, I really do feel like it's going to be a commercial hit. How did festivals play into that for you?
I think that, I mean, really, I didn't even realize it until just now that I am drinking out of my Woodstock Film Festival mug, actually. So here you go for the YouTube viewers. It's my favorite mug because it's so large and it allows so much coffee. You know, we didn't. And yes, and I agree with you. The festival circuit conversation is a whole other show into itself. You know more about that world than I do, having, you know, been at Sundance and all the rest. But, you know, we kind of, we kind of made our peace with the way that went for us. I think part of that was COVID. Part of that was, if I dare say it in a public forum, I don't think film festivals are what they used to be. I had a conversation earlier with someone who's so wonderful. He's a reporter who's trying to help us out with some press coverage. And we had a really frank conversation about how what is considered independent cinema isn't independent cinema. Like, I don't really consider, and I feel totally confident going on the record saying this, I don't believe that movies that are coming out of Telluride and out of Toronto, for the most part, are independent films. Now, there are some great independent films. If you're at Toronto and you get to see what's in the Canada, in some of the Canada selections, I think there's some wonderful independent films that are there. But I think a lot of what the film festival circuit has become is very curated programming that is largely determined by what is lower budget financing, but it's still much bigger budgets than anybody like me could possibly fathom to raise for my first feature without some other kind of profile behind me. And so, leaving that piece of it aside, I think partially because of the year that we decided to premiere the film, we didn't want to just do a virtual screening. We didn't want to fight for those very limited spots that had already been taken by films that aren't like ours. And so I was really pleased when it worked out with Woodstock, because we got to play an in-person screening. And I joke where we were like, we didn't know if the movie would ever play on a big screen. And then it played on the biggest screen I've ever seen. Like, it was literally the biggest drive-in screen, I think, in the Northeast. And it was wonderful. And like, all of our cast, some of our cast and all of our crew could come out, and we could all be together, even if we were in our cars wearing masks. But it was a special way to see a movie in a year where on earth would we have been able to do that? In a different time, I think that a lot of filmmakers, especially, and I'm one of them, that when we were in the process of putting the movie together, you have these dreams of your film playing festivals and going around the world and getting to talk to people in different markets and different cultures about your film. We made peace with the fact that this was our movie's journey, and this is where we are. But I think, like I said, I'll leave it there. But I do think what we consider the festival circuit and the way that independent films are being distributed and out in the world is really changing.
I'm just curious, just going with a film festival discussion, like, in your experience, like, do you think there is value for films to go to festivals if they're playing like not the big majors? Because like you said, the majors are all going after these movies that, for us independent filmmakers, like, it's kind of an impossible situation for us to have a movie that would play, especially for a first feature, at a festival like that. So like, going to like the middle ground festivals, like, is that a value, or do you feel like, might as well just go straight to distribution or straight to sales reps, like right when your film's done, and like skip that whole, like expensive process of submitting to like hundreds of festivals?
Yeah. Sorry, I was not prepared for that question.
Can I vamp while you think? Because I wanted to add something, which knowing festival curation and knowing the players that I do think your film was teetering on the edge of being selected. And I think it's worth it to take that chance. And I want to hear what Rebecca says, but I want to just give a little intel in that you had the access to take that chance to, like, you could have played Sundance. I think you could have played Toronto. And jumping in here, we had a guest a few weeks ago, Ben Hickernell, who made a film, What We Found. Do you know Ben? He's part of the cohort, I feel like. And that film had Elizabeth Mitchell. It had named cast. It skewed a little genre, but really at its core was a drama. Yet he did speak about the fact that his film was not really being curated or taken seriously. It was thought of as too commercial versus, and I think that's what I alluded to earlier with that, the gray area of mystery / suspense thriller in the festival world not getting the credence that it deserves, those films. Did you ever feel like genre was a part of the festival conversation that may have hurt you?
Sure. So I think what's interesting with our film in particular is it's been called different things depending on who's interested in it. It's a coming of age. I mean, coming of age drama thriller. Like, what does that even mean? Okay. Like, I mean, it's a movie. That's it. It's a movie. It has good characters and a good story.
Period piece. You forgot to add that.
Period piece. It's like, let's just hashtag everything that we can. I think that it can work in lots of different ways. I think with particular, it was so funny because even early on, I was told, oh, movies with teenagers make no money because teenagers aren't stars. Then I heard, oh, a teen movie is a slam dunk to sell because teenage girls are the biggest audience out there of consuming entertainment. Then I heard, oh, a thriller is a slam dunk. Then I heard, oh, but if it's like not a straight thriller, people are going to be disappointed. Then I heard, oh, a drama. That means people will take it seriously. Then I heard, oh, no one wants dramas anymore. Dramas are boring. So it's like, and then period piece, it was like, oh, if you don't pull it off right, well, no one's going to buy it because it's going to look bad. And by the way, we did pull it off. But my point is that I don't think anybody knows anything. And then in the film festival circuit, especially, look, I think that there have been great strides made in the voices that are being amplified and the types of films that we're seeing. I also think that people just like to watch movies that speak to them. And I think for us, I kept feeling like I was chasing like a moving target of what people wanted my film to be. And we actually had a cool opportunity because of COVID to really take a step back and think about like, what is this movie really? You know, when everything quit and film festivals closed down and, you know, we were just on the brink of finishing the film, was like, what does this movie really want to be? And we actually did a re-edit and cut out about 12 minutes at the beginning and restructured the first act. And I think it made it a better film. And it was because the noise went away of everybody telling us what the movie had to be. And so I think that there's a lot of pressure to fit into a narrative of what you think people are looking for. But by the time you are able to achieve that, they're already going to be looking for something else. So it's a fool's errand. And so I truly believe that, I really believe that nobody knows anything when it comes to what will be successful, what people want to see. You know, programmers are constantly changing their minds about what's relevant to the marketplace. And I think that actually what's even sometimes relevant to programmers isn't relevant to the marketplace. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it was that was my experience of navigating that like really strange world of just, and eventually I just threw my hands up and I said, we're going to make the movie that we think is the right movie to make. And actually having a little bit of silence really helped us find what that was.
I think we have one more question, Alrik, if you have it ready.
As your experience as a filmmaker making your film, and this is your first feature, right? Like going through this journey, you're at the end pretty much, like the movie's coming out. Like when you think about what you're going to do for your next project, do you feel that like you'd want it to be enter into the world in a different way? Or do you feel that like the going straight to distribution is a totally awesome thing and that like you don't need the whole film festival experience in order to like have a great, you know, healthy release?
I'm really sad that I didn't get to do that. You know, that was something I was really looking forward to, as far as, you know, to your point of the film festival release versus straight to distribution. I don't think it's one or the other. I don't want to say like, oh, I would only choose one or I would only choose the other. But I think that I had to make peace with the fact that that wasn't happening so that I could embrace what the film's future was going to be. But yeah, I was extremely disappointed. I mean, it was something I was truly so excited about, and something that, I was very fortunate to experience with other films that I had worked on previously as a producer, where I got to go to all these really incredible film festivals and, meet incredible filmmakers from around the world. And that was something that I felt was my reward for how hard we had all worked to make this film. Was I was excited to take the team on the road and talk about the movie with like really excited, cinematic, enthusiastic audiences, and we didn't get to do that. So I don't think it's a trade-off. I'm really grateful to have distribution in the way that we do. But yes, there were some dark moments in the last year where I was profoundly depressed that wasn't something that I got to experience with this movie, given how many years I worked on it and how much time was invested in it and how many things happened in my life in the time of making this film that, you're looking for something to like feel good at the end of a long journey.
I think we need to go back in time and remind ourselves of the early enthusiasm we had for filmmaking. So what's the first film you ever made, and how do you feel about it now?
So the very first film I made is a black and white film that I made in 1999. No, sorry, in 2000. And it was back when the New York Film Academy was just a summer camp for students who wanted to learn about shooting 16 millimeter black and white film. And I went to Boston for 4 weeks, and I made a short murder mystery film about a woman who goes back to the scene of the crime where her boyfriend was murdered. And then she is killed by the guy who killed him. And then he licks the knife at the end. And I was so impressed by the fact that chocolate syrup looks like blood on black and white film. It was really fun. My favorite memory this is the thing that like made me like totally hooked on filmmaking. And I remember my two favorite things that we, aside from the chocolate syrup on the knife, and was that we did this really cool shopping cart dolly shot with like this old Aeroflex camera. And it was so cool. I was like, this is the coolest thing on earth. I want to do this for the rest of my life.
What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
Honestly, to just keep going. And to just believe that if you stick with it, and I know that sounds like a very big cliche, but if I didn't have that advice given to me pretty young, I don't think I would have ever gotten here, because it's a very grueling profession, and it often feels like it owes you nothing. So if you want to you have to just keep going. I don't like to make this the center of any conversation I have about this film, but I suffered a great tragedy in my life, pretty close to the end of post-production on this movie. And that advice never resonated with me more clearly, because I felt like I got this far, I have to just keep going. And I think that life is going to get in your way, and things are not always going to go the way that you plan on them. And I think you just have to kind of stick with it and try to rediscover. In a way, it's like a relationship as a filmmaker with filmmaking is sort of like a marriage. It's not always going to be great all the time, right? And you have to try to find ways to dig within yourself and rediscover your love for it, even when things are not going so well, and fall in love with the process and fall in love with the craft. And sometimes when I'm really having a hard time, I go back to my favorite films and I rewatch them, and I think about why I'm still doing this.
What are your goals as a filmmaker?
I would like to continue to tell stories that that mean something to me. And I think my biggest interest as a storyteller is stories that don't have good guys and bad guys. I don't think that's real. I don't think that anybody, I mean, look, there are terrible people in the world, but I think that, as a psychologist once said to me, I think about 97% of people wake up in the morning and think that they're setting out to do the right thing, whether it's for themselves and it's selfishly motivated and they don't realize that it's hurting other people, or maybe they do and they just don't care, but it feels right to them. And one of the things that, of all the screenplays that I've written, this obviously being the first one I wrote that was produced as a feature, but I have other things I've been writing, and they're all dealing with moral ambiguity and how people aren't all good or all bad. And I think that that carries across all different kinds of decisions that we make. And I think if we were able to like be a little bit more open-minded to gray areas rather than trying to kind of contextualize everything as black and white, we'd all have a little bit of an easier experience as human beings. So that's really my goal ultimately. It's probably why I respond, I think, not to generalize, but a lot of the filmmakers that inspired me pretty early on were European filmmakers who I think are a bit more honest about the flaws of humanity in some capacities. But I think I think as Americans, we're getting better at it. I really do. What piece of advice would I give myself?
You could go back in time.
It's going to be harder than you thought it was going to be. Of course, it's going to be harder than you thought it's going to be. You start out and you're so excited and you love something so much and you want to make your mark on the world. But I would say the advice I would give myself is the greatest and most difficult virtue in life is patience. It just is. You have to be patient. And not just with the process, because the process requires incredible patience, but even going back to what I said earlier about how it was only in the ultimate shutdown of COVID where we were just literally, like I said, I'm in New York City, locked in an apartment, where I could think about how to make my film better. And it was only with the patience to do that and to sit and have meaningful conversations with people I hadn't spoken to in a long time, and with my collaborators who also were locked down, and to just be patient with that part of the process. The answers, and it was so opposite in many ways of like going back to my earlier years where I was working in development, where everything had to be so fast and had to be done yesterday. And, you know, I had a very talented boss who unfortunately passed away recently, very talented executive and producer. But she pushed me a lot and would always be like, faster, 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 faster. And so, and I think that, look, she was incredible at her job and that served her, but it didn't serve me. I needed time to think. And so what I would encourage my former self to do is to believe that patience and deep thought actually leads somewhere. And it doesn't mean that you're just slowing yourself down.
Is making movies hard?
Yeah, of course it is. But it's if you work with the right people, it's the best kind of hard.
Sell your wares. Tell us how everyone can support you.
Absolutely. So the film will be available on October 1st. It will be anywhere you might like to stream movies. So Amazon, Apple iTunes, Apple TV, Vudu, Google, YouTube, Xbox, Redbox Digital, Hoopla, which I actually love, and watch a lot of movies on that platform. And then on demand, if you still have cable, it's on Comcast, Cox, DirecTV, Dish, basically anybody that provides cable to you, it will be streaming on demand.
Yay.
Yeah. And then also in theaters, if you're in the LA area, we'll be at the Lemley New Hall and waiting to just hear what other theaters will be in. We're doing, I think, a 5 to 7 city release. So
thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you. This is so fun.
Amazing.
Oh my God, Liz, this is like it's like some weird dream. Like we were like we met at some like random party like 12 years ago. And I'm like, imagine one day we get to do a podcast. This is so fun.
Alrik, what do you remember about talking with Rebecca a few days ago?
Oh my gosh, Rebecca, what can you say about this person? Like, so inspirational, so smart, and so like focused and controlled in the way that she approaches her filmmaking. It kind of makes me feel like I'm a blundering maniac when it comes to like the way I put a project together, because she just seems like she's so concise and just so, intentional with everything she does, not just with the writing and the creative, but like with the way she approaches putting it all together. And I think that was kind of a huge takeaway for me about like how methodical she was and how patient she was with her film production, and then how that led to like, one hell of a looking movie. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but this thing looks incredible. And like, it's got some really awesome young not name cast, but young cast that have been in lots of things that you have heard of, and it's really like, it's kind of like the ideal first feature for any filmmaker, really, in a lot of ways. So it's like, that was sort of my big takeaway. But what about you, Liz?
Rebecca is a very, very, very close friend of mine. She's like in the inner core circle. And I've witnessed her from, first few drafts of the script to now the film coming out, moments where we never knew it would happen to now it's really making a splash. And I 100% agree with you. She's intentional. And I'm very proud of her. I guess that's my takeaway. I remember just like sitting there in the Zoom, feeling really happy, getting to see her face. And I think they're friends that we have where I have some friends where I just sit there and I'm like, I'm jealous of you. And there's some friends where you can just feel very happy and proud of knowing them and their efforts, because you feel like they deserved every minutia of success that's coming their way. So that's the way I feel about her. The way I'm excited for this film. I want everyone to see what breaks the ice, and glad that we got to chat with her.
So Liz, have you heard of this IATSE strike?
It is all I hear about. It is what I hear about nonstop. Absolutely. But what do you have to say about it?
I read this article. It was brought to my attention by our wonderful producer Eric, and I think this is it's really interesting because
what article did you read, Alrik? What article?
I read the article on the Hollywood Reporter with the headline. I don't even remember what the headline was. It was
about the IATSE strike. Yeah, you read an article. I got it.
Yeah, now I want to prove that I did. Cinematographers Guild Board votes unanimously to support IATSE strike authorization. So that's what it said. And basically, like the article, no offense to whoever wrote this, but that's basically all the thing says. It doesn't give any more detail or real insight. It just basically outlines exactly what happened. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things that is important for people to get, like paid back for all the hard work they do, especially since like all these new avenues of studios being able to just like basically do vertical integration on their work. It's like, which was, I think, like supposed to be like not something you're supposed to do, but
well, it was illegal for like 80 years or something.
Exactly.
And then they just disbanded that policy.
Wow. Yeah. So basically, now it's like, oh yeah, Disney can hire whatever they want, do, and then they can just release the movie through their own service, and all the things that were in place to pay out people for all their hard work on the back end, like now don't matter anymore because they found another way of getting it out there through the streaming services. And that's true for, Warner Brothers. That's true for Paramount. That's true for Universal. It's because they all have their streaming platforms now. Right. So like Liz, I mean, doesn't it seem like really crucial that like people get, paid back for, if they do a good job, if something's super successful, they should see something, right?
Well, I mean, there's many issues here, right? And one of them is when you work under a new media contract, but the media is no longer new anymore. I think those contracts were built because it was like, ooh, the internet, ooh, streaming. What is this newfangled thing? And they didn't really know how to figure out and break down the revenue and how the working conditions should be, because it was this new frontier. So I think that's one aspect of this. And the second thing is, what I'm most interested in, obviously compensation, but most is restricting working hours so that people can go home, get sleep, and have decent turnarounds. If you follow the IATSE Stories Instagram account, which is like really doing a great job of amplifying all the individual stories of the workers who authorize the vote to strike, they're just horror stories. They're like, my relationship has suffered. I had to pull over to the side of the road countless times because I'm not sleeping. And it's just really absurd the way workers are abused and exploited in this industry. So I'm most interested in like better working conditions for my friends.
So what is there a solution here? Is it just like, oh, we'll take no overtime ever? Like we just like, or only can work 14-hour days. That's the max amount of day if you go into overtime, or is there caps on working days? Like what is,
I think they're suggesting like there's specific things that they're suggesting. But I obviously think compensation is a part of this. And there's this great IATSE story where the guy was like, you know, an actor, if you're bringing in a high profile actor onto a shoot, their agent is going to make more money if they work less days because they can pack more projects into that actor's schedule. So those days become packed with shooting time, and then the hours for the crew gets compounded because of that. So it's like from the top down, it's just exploiting people, it's exploiting talent, it's exploiting the crew. So I think it's slowing down is what needs to happen. Is like, as an industry, we need to just slow down just a little bit and to compensate people appropriately.
Budgets are going to get bigger doing that, and like all these other things are gonna kind of be another like a whatever snowball effect from it. But I mean, I think that's for the greater good though, and especially because they're spending so many goddamn dollars on these things anyways. I mean, this new Last of Us TV show's got $10 million per episode that HBO's putting down. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Like you should be able to get it done in a reasonable amount of time if you're paying $10 million an episode. I mean, there's no excuse. Maybe your pockets will get a little bit thinner, studio execs or agents or whoever is profiting the most. But it's going to be better for the show.
I think that's the argument. The argument is that like the people at the top are absorbing the majority of more revenue than they should, and it's becoming like a political fight and an economic fight and an ethical fight. I totally am with you. I don't necessarily know if that's true. I mean, like, I'm not looking at the books. Like, I don't know where the money's going. All I know is that you shouldn't be forcing people to work 14-hour days. I just think that's crazy. When are you going to see your family? This is an industry.
But you've been on big sets, like you see how lavish things get with like the crafty and how things are with like all the services and all the things that are provided for a crew and for cast especially cast, crew too. I mean, for both. But yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that needs to be pared down. It's like, we don't need to be treated like kings when we're making a movie or a show. Yeah. Like we could just get like a basic, nice spread, enough, to have a nice day, and like, a reasonable trailer. It doesn't need to be like, whatever, like a Metallica sized, whatever. Like it could just be, I feel like we should just kind of go back to like doing things in a sensible manner, but that's not kind of our culture, really. I think American culture isn't really sensible. Bigger's it's all better. About bigger's better. Like, my value as a person or an actor or whatever is connected to the trailer that I get on my set. Right. It's like, if I don't have a big enough trailer, then I'm not good enough. It's like, well, that's not, fuck that idea. The whole mentality should just be like gone.
It's ego. And it's also like, it's evening the playing field between the actors, right? One actor sees someone else's trailer is really big and they demand something else, and more resources go to talent, and it's absurd. I completely agree. I've never been on a big set, by the way. I've literally never been on a big set. I never shadowed anyone. I've never been on a,
never been a PA running around.
Never. Okay. I interned for Adam Goodman, who is the head of Paramount, for like 6 months. and I drove a golf cart on the studio lot. That's the closest I've gotten to a big set. I've never gone on the set. But I do remember that when I was there, I heard stories. This was back iPad 2 days, iPad 2 days,
iPad 2 days. Okay.
And it was one of the Transformers movies. And I remember seeing that all of the actors who were the top billing actors got iPad 2s. And I remember just thinking like, what, why does that happen?
Yeah. Why do you spend $500 per actor on a gift?
Yeah.
Like gifts are nice. And like, I mean, gifts I get are a big deal. And like, like I've done gifts on short films, I've done gifts on my feature, but like, like a reasonable like gift, like not a fucking iPad that's brand new.
So hopefully I'm very excited. I'm excited for change. I'm like in unity with our union brothers and sisters fighting the good fight.
Well, I'm a little concerned that like what we just talked about isn't necessarily being addressed in this, that it's not like trying to refocus resources in a way that's going to benefit the production better. But, maybe, but, I think that's really what needs to happen is like, like the portion of the budget that's being spent on these people up here needs to trickle down to the rest of the production in order for productions to actually work correctly,
Well, we're trying. I mean, we're with the short film I'm doing, we're like tiny. We're so small. But what I'm trying to do, and we'll see if I get the ovaries to do it, is we're trying to do salary transparency across the board for everyone so that everyone knows what everyone's getting. And then we're doing 8-hour talent calls. And my cinematographer doesn't want a 10-hour crew call. She wants more. So we're not going more than 12 hours, but we might do an 11-hour crew call, which I know is still revolutionary. But I really wanted 10 to like give people a break. But point being, I think if more, instead of these like ridiculous like badges, like, these like superficial badges of honor with regard to green sets and diversity sets and all these things. I just think those like stickers and those emblems are meaningless. Like put your money where your mouth is, pay people appropriately, and then make it transparent and tell everyone what's going on. And I think salary transparency could be the way to go.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool one. So like you're not paying everyone the same amount. Everyone's getting structured based off their role. And then you're gonna like, how are you gonna announce that? Are you going to send out like a newsletter to the whole crew, or are you going to send it in an email, or like
before every hire? I've told them like we want to do salary transparency, but we'll only do it if everyone buys in. And like the goal originally was everyone to get the same rate, but it really became impossible to do that. I can do that on a feature, I can't do that on a short. So I have to. I honestly, it's like pressing the green button at this point, because I think almost everyone has bought into the idea of salary transparency. And now I'm just waiting for it to blow back and someone to yell at me for giving makeup 5 times what they have. But you know what? Like it is a makeup heavy shoot. So
yeah, special effects makeup, man, they need the money. I think I want to hear more about this. I want to hear how it goes. I want you to chronicle the steps, because I've never tried anything like this. Like salary transparency, it's really touchy. Like you got to be really careful, because like I've worked on sets where everyone's working for free, but we needed to get this one person to work because we did no other option. It was like a Steadicam person. We gave them $100, and then we have to be like, look, no one else is getting paid. Like, please don't talk about that you got only $100, because then they'll say things like, we're only getting $100 for this. And it's just like, wait, I'm not getting anything, and you're like, oh man. So I've definitely been nervous to let that kind of information out, except when I was paying everybody the same. Then it was easy. That's like everyone's getting the same. There's no complaints,
Well, I would say one thing helps. 2 things help is Sean is playing one of the characters, and I am openly telling everyone that he's not being paid. And in the film, his penis falls off. So like, this is the father of my child. This is the person that means more to me than anything. Him and Colin are like my world, and he gets nothing. So I think they know it's not a reflection of care or value, right?
Right.
And then also, I'm not taking a fee, and we have at least at least one more volunteer laborer in this short.
Nice.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what happens. I'll tell you.
You tell me. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good move though, to not take compensation as the director. I mean, how can you on a project
it's
like
half
this?
my money. So like, what am I going to do?
Pay yourself.
And then put it right back in the movie.
So Liz,
Yeah.
I've got a question for you about distribution.
I'm here.
So like I'm in the process of taking distribution meetings right now and meetings with sales agents and all this stuff. And I kind of wanted to get your take on this idea that I had that I've sort of started to implement with friend of the show, Jeanette Bloom. So basically we're like talking to the same distributors and the same sales agents and everything. So we were like, well, we should just share everything. Like
Yes.
we should just talk about like what they're offering her, what they're offering me, just like do it. And my question was like, is that wrong for any
No.
reason? Like, is there any reason not to do that? Like, should we be worried about this kind of like open, transparent communication?
That's like the benefit of hiring someone like me. Like what you're doing is you're like getting the data without having to hire anyone. Because like I've done deals, I've witnessed contracts, and I could say, look, they went down to this on this other deal. I think you can get there. I think what's interesting about you and Jeanette doing it is I've had women filmmakers tell me that they had like a best friend or a husband who happened to be male and was a filmmaker who worked with the same company, and the company offered them a different deal. And you can always like, it can always be that film was in more demand, or that film has some more of a niche audience, or whatever it is. But there's also unconscious bias coming into some of these negotiations. So I think it's really good, for whatever the reason, to check the company and to check each other and see whether you're being taken advantage of or not in that moment. Yeah. So I think that's super smart. And I think if Alex Ferrari's Facebook group is a good resource for something like that, to go in and say, who's worked with X company, let's talk about what they offered you.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah. It's interesting. It's, it's funny to just hear these pitches and, people try to sell you on working with them, or, in the one meeting I had this morning, kind of be like more like playing like kind of coy, or like, not like, well, I don't know how much I can get. It's just like, I don't know. I don't really appreciate that kind of way of like talking about something, or trying to get me to feel like, I don't know, like, oh, I need you, because my movie's not that good because you're like hemming and hawing, like, oh, I need you. Like, I really want to make a deal with you because you're gonna, maybe if you take a chance on me, you can sell my movie. And that's sort of like the kind of dynamic I could tell that he was trying to set up. And it's just like, no, dude, that's not cool. Yeah, I mean, but the advantage I have over most filmmakers is that I have my producer, Jeff, who's like sold like 20 movies, who's on these calls with me. And like, he just knows like how to get right to the questions. Like, he asks the right questions. He knows when people are bullshitting. He knows like what it actually should, like what they could be getting, or they might be able to get for something like this. So it's like a little bit of an extra, piece of ammunition or whatever. So I wonder, like, I don't know if Jeanette has a person like that. I don't think she does. Like, those conversations are probably very different, when she's just a lone filmmaker without that kind of veteran in the corner to like help, facilitate the conversation.
Well, yes. And since I do sales now, I've been sitting on more chats with distributors, and I've seen one distributor go from pitch to pitch with the same amount of enthusiasm for each title, where they saw the movie for one film and they didn't see the movie for the other. Like, I've seen, like, that's their job, right? Is to sell you on them and sell you on their services. And like, enthusiasm often wins out. And I think distributors, or like that acquisitions person, knows that all they have to do is turn up the charm, compliment you on your film, speak with enthusiasm, and come at you with like a really optimistic outlook for how the film will go. I tend to really like the distributors who are pretty level-headed, even they're not that emotional, and they just say, look, we can't give you any projections, but here's what we can promise you. And usually if they say they love my film, I don't trust them.
Right.
I trust the people that give me like a concrete, pragmatic plan for how they're going to get the film out into the world and like can talk to me like a human more so than the distributor that just says, wow, I love that part where the robot sticks a knife in someone's stomach. That was so great. You know, whatever. I didn't make that movie, but you know what I'm saying.
I want to make that movie. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's kind of hard to tell when if it's authentic or not, because in one of the distributors who really fawned over my movie and like, you know, just said the nicest things, and like not just like general niceties, but like very specific things they took away from the movie. And it's like, oh wow, it's like then I'm thinking, did I write that anywhere online that he could have just said that? Like, because he read that in my director's statement, or he read that somewhere, and he's like, yeah, you really nailed this. And I'm like, oh, that's what I was going for. It's like, wait, I said that's what I was going for over here. So he just repeated it back to me. So, but I feel like, you know, I don't know. I'm just like a really trusting person, so I'm not gonna like go ahead into a conversation and just think that this person's lying to me. But I think it makes it easy when they're like giving you like the actual numbers and the actual like, you know, whatever, like their hope, what they're asking for, and then like giving you the contract. But the other person I talked to this morning, like I was like asking like, so what's your deal? Like what is it? Like, what do you take? And he was like, well, I gotta get my partner to watch it and see if she likes it. I don't really want to say a number right now. Like I want to look at it first. And with her, like I love the movie, but she needs to see it. And it's like, well, you can't even tell me like what a rough idea of what your take would be, or if you're going to take a fee and a percentage, or just a percentage, or just a fee. He like didn't want to answer that question. And I was like, why don't you just answer that question? Like, why do you have to like,
so where are they taking a phone call with you unless they're prepared to send you an offer? Like, I don't understand that mentality. It's like time is really valuable to everyone these days. So don't waste it unless you really want the movie.
We're going to have another call on Thursday, which I think he'll make the offer on. So it's like, okay. Anyways, yeah, I see you rolling your eyes.
I write about this a lot, so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But I think that they know our character. They know we're emotional beings. They know we're sensitive. We're artists, and they know what things to poke at. Like they know if you're making, you know, dystopic sci-fi, you know, film, what your goals are for that film. Like it's all psychology. It's all social psychology. And I think as filmmakers, we get told no so often that it's very tempting to just be thrilled and excited by anything and anyone who says yes to you. And that's where you're right now. So you're going to have to check your bias after every meeting and make sure that they're a good partner.
Last question. Are there any like giant red flags to look for in these meetings? Like anything that like if I hear someone say or hear like a certain like thing being presented, I should be like, okay, not those people.
If they guarantee a Netflix deal, or if they guarantee a certain amount of revenue, like no matter what, if they give you projections and they say, well, we're going to make you at least 100K or something like that, I wouldn't trust them, because there's no way they can guarantee that. And that's really just lip service for you to try to get them to sign with you. And the other things obviously are like term length. Like if they are adamant about having a 10 to 15-year term length, that's a red flag. And if, you know, you call them and you say, well, like, you're not going to use my educational rights, are you? Or what about my live semi-theatrical screening rights? Are you really going to use those? Can I carve those out? And they say like, well, you know, we really want to handle everything, sorry, I didn't mean to do a male voice for everything. All men are not evil. But if they put forth this control over you, anything that implies control or inflexibility, those are red flags.
And then is like a 20-80 split for the distributor and the filmmaker pretty standard, or is that like
that's
a
good.
bad deal?
No, 80-20 is good. A filmmaker gets 80, distributor gets 20. I've seen anywhere from 20 to 30%. It's usually in that range in terms of distributor take, and the average is usually 25. So 80-20 is really good. 80-20 is like what Indie Rights does. It's what Giant does. And those are companies that don't market your title. So just recognize that usually they'll do a better split to you if there's less effort on their part to put forth like a customized release plan. And if they really put muscle in, they're probably going to increase that split a little bit towards them.
Interesting. Well, thanks, Liz. This has been very helpful. If you want to reach out to us and send us a question, a comment, or suggestion, you can do so at podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. Or if you like the show, you can leave us a review on iTunes. I don't think we've gotten one of those in a while, so that would be nice. Anyone? And finally, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MMIH Podcast, and YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast. A big thanks to Rebecca Eskreis for coming on the show, and thanks to Adriana Valentine, not really for setting up the interview because Liz is friends with Rebecca, but she did provide some images. So thank you so much, Adriana. Much appreciated. And we'll talk to y'all next week. You do like publish your log line to a network of industry